What's up guys, it's Bo here again, and in this entry on this another hot day, I'm kind of sweating buckets here, I want to talk about the somewhat controversial topic of evasiveness, right, and indirectness. So what do I mean by this, right? Evasiveness is basically the character trait, or how it is very often looked upon in society as a character flaw. It is the character trait that basically means that you are a very indirect kind of a person, right? So you're someone who is not very direct when it comes to interacting with other people, and the general approach with which you tackle, problems and situations, right? So we live in a society, right, like I said, that frowns upon people who are flaky, right? And I think everyone knows pretty much what I mean by when I say someone who's flaky, right? Someone who doesn't keep promises, someone who is very slippery, very hard to get a hold of, someone who is never available, who is just, you try to confront them about something, and you can't try and confront them, and they slip, out of your grasp, kind of a thing, like. And this kind of thing, it's very frowned upon in society. Society favors people, and this is very reflective in the work environment. Hiring, criteria that people look for when they hire people. They want people who are very direct, who keep promises, who are generally very upfront, very extrovert, very upfront. So basically, it's almost universally seen, this indirectness, this evasiveness that flaky people have, as something that's very bad, right? But in this entry, I want to give you an additional perspective, right? Which is something that when I had it, kind of blew my mind as well. Because I happen to be one of these very flaky, very indirect, very people, who one gets annoyed at because he's just all over the place when it comes to keeping his word, things like that. But I reached a point of understanding where I started to see this trait of evasiveness as something that is potentially very useful, right? It's potentially something that's very useful for you if you happen to be someone who is very naturally indirect, very naturally evasive, right? So, using an analogy, right, there's, in martial arts, right, there are martial arts that are focused on attacking, right, on offense. So I'm not an expert on martial arts, but I guess it would be things like, taekwondo, karate, those kinds of disciplines. They're very much focused on force and attack, right, and striking your opponent. And then there are also martial arts types that fall under the more defensive type of martial arts. Things like Aikido or Wing Chun. Martial arts styles that teach you to evade your opponent and to use the opponent's weight against them, right? So you're not using your own strength, which is very much emphasized in something like, karate or taekwondo, where you have to develop your strength in order to strike your opponent, your strength and your accuracy and your speed at striking. The more defensive styles of martial arts focus more on evasion, right? And this applies to what I'm about to say, which is that you don't have to necessarily be a striker, right? There are some people who are more direct naturally. I did a blog entry about MBTI, right? So this correlates to basically extroverted sensing and extroverted intuition, right? Extroverted sensors, they're very good at striking at offense, right? They are very good at, being direct in that way, So an offensive martial arts style, for example, would suit that kind of person. Whereas someone who is an extroverted intuitive is someone who is less direct, they're not so strong in offense, right? For them, it makes more sense, if we're talking in terms of just success in life, it makes more sense for you to adopt a style of approach that is more, that correlates more with your natural strengths, right? So there are the people who are good at dealing with people, confronting with issues directly. And then there are the people who are more indirect, and an evasive style suits them better, right? So what am I getting at, right? Well, what I'm basically saying is, if you're someone who likes to ignore people, right? If you're someone who likes to ignore phone calls when people call you, and then make up excuses about why you couldn't take the call, if you're someone who makes, wishy-washy promises that you don't tend to keep very often, unless it's something that's very important to you, then, do that, right? And, this is, like I said, somewhat controversial because our society is so focused on being, very upfront, being very direct with how you handle situations. But I'm saying that if you naturally are someone who doesn't handle things directly very well, and you prefer more of an evasive style of approach when you're handling people and situations, then adopt that. Because it takes less energy for you to do that, right? If you find that if blanking people takes less energy for you to do than, having to use energy to confront someone directly every single time that something comes up, or you need to tell someone something, then, that's obviously the first approach is more effective, right? And, the bigger picture of it is basically, you're going to have loads of situations where you have to basically reject opportunities, right? A lot of, what is basically taught in the world is to go for opportunities, YOLO, right? But there is an equally important need for you to say no to a lot of things, right? I call this FOMO is FOMO rather than YOLO, right? Like, fear of missing out is worse than, potentially than, you only live once kind of a mantra, right? But basically, so if you're going to have to say no to all these different opportunities, all these different people, then it makes the most sense to adopt an approach that is most efficient for you, right? And the most efficient thing for our kind of people is to just ignore people, right? I know this from the the average person's perspective, right? This sounds very stupid advice, it sounds like very silly advice basically. But I assure you that it is an option. It is a very viable option that you can adopt in life, right? And ever since I had this realization, I started to feel less guilty when I employed it, right? Because when I was younger, friends would call me up, and I would fob them off basically, or I would make up some excuse about why I can't, why I couldn't take the call, why I couldn't meet up with them, why I couldn't talk to them, and I used to feel really guilty about it, particularly with certain friends who would call me out on it, There'd be certain friends who'd be like, why are you being a dickhead and not answering my calls? Or why aren't you responding, that kind of thing, right? This is particularly bad in school, as you know, like you have to hit deadlines and stuff like that. Of course, you have to hit deadlines, but ultimately, as someone who is very naturally evasive, right? What I had to do was I had to learn to be direct in some way, right? I was very, naturally my style is very evasive, right? It's more natural for me to evade a situation than to confront it head on, right? But there are points in life where you have to confront things head on, right? When it comes down to the crunch, sometimes you have to confront someone head on. You have to be upfront with them, right? Particularly with people who aren't evasive, people who are more direct. You have to be direct with them in order for the message to get through to them, right? But yeah, so if you are someone who is naturally evasive, right, then by all means, take the time to learn how to be direct, and it is something that is useful to learn, how to confront, because it is just something that adds another tool to your arsenal, right? But then, once you are able to confront, like, know that when it is intelligent to have to confront, and when it would be more efficient and, more efficient to just ignore someone, right? To just, just leave people alone, Sometimes you don't have to answer to every single thing, just, the other person isn't necessarily going to die if you don't, if you don't talk to them on this occasion, or if you blank them or something, they're not going to suffer for very long. And if they do call you out on it, then have that conversation, be upfront with them. But if you feel that it would waste a lot of effort and time to have to confront someone every single time that something came up, then be intelligent about it, and just ignore them, pretty much, right? So, of course, after having said all of this, I'm not telling you to become someone who never keeps his or her promise. Always flakes people, fobs them off. Is never commits to anything. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that this is a strategy that you can use in order for you to then align yourself with things that you actually do want to align yourself with. Because there's so many distractions in life. There's so much bullshit that vies for your attention. And you can't necessarily, pay attention to every single little thing. And, believe me, like, people and things will strive for your attention, right? And, if you're someone who feels guilty about ignoring those things, then you're going to be a sucker, basically. People are just going to play you, and you're going to just become another people pleaser, right? As I was. So, yeah, evasiveness is a tactic that you can use without feeling guilty in order to filter out the experiences and the people that you don't truly want in your life without having to confront every single one of them, because that's just a waste of energy, right? And then, you'll have more time for the things you actually want to align with. So, cool. That's my controversial perspective, and hope that was helpful. I will see you in the next entry. Peace.